There are certain names that define an era. In the 1990s, one of those names was Meg Ryan. She was not simply a successful actress. She was an institution. She represented something that audiences desperately wanted to believe in. The idea that love was real, that it was worth fighting for, and that it could be funny and messy and still end well. For nearly a decade, she delivered that promise with remarkable consistency, and Hollywood rewarded her handsomely for it. She was born Margaret Hyra on November 19, 1961, in Fairfield, Connecticut, into a family shaped by education and performance. Her mother had worked as an actress before becoming a teacher. Her father was a teacher as well. There was nothing particularly glamorous about her upbringing, but there was clearly something in her that was always reaching towards something larger. When she eventually chose the stage name Meg Ryan, borrowing her maternal grandmother's maiden name, it was a quiet, modest decision that would eventually become one of the most recognizable names in the entertainment industry. Her academic path took her first to the University of Connecticut and then to New York University, where she studied journalism before the pull of acting became impossible to ignore. She left NYU just one semester short of her degree to pursue a career on screen, a decision that most people in her position never make and that the entertainment industry rarely rewards. But Ryan was not most people. She landed a recurring role on the soap opera As the World Turns, playing Betsy Stewart Montgomery Andropoulos from 1982 to 1984. It was demanding, unglamorous work, the kind that teaches an actor more in a single week than a year of classroom training ever could. She absorbed everything the experience had to offer and then set her sights on something bigger. The films that made her a legend. Her path to stardom ran through one of the most commercially successful action films of the 1980s. Top Gun, released in 1986, was a phenomenon. Tom Cruise and Anthony Edwards were the stars, but Ryan, playing the wife of Edwards' character Goose, registered with audiences in a way that supporting roles rarely do. She was warm, natural, and impossible to ignore. Directors took note. Writers took note. And 3 years later, she was handed the role that would change the course of her career and, in many ways, the course of Hollywood romantic comedy itself. When Harry Met Sally arrived in 1989 and immediately established itself as something special, Ryan played Sally Albright, a meticulous, opinionated, emotionally intelligent woman navigating friendship, love, and the complicated space between the two. The film was written by Nora Ephron and directed by Rob Reiner. It gave Ryan material worthy of her abilities. She earned her first Golden Globe nomination for the performance, and audiences responded with genuine, lasting affection. They did not just enjoy her in the film, they trusted her. That trust became the foundation on which her entire career was built. Through the 1990s, Ryan appeared in a series of romantic comedies that collectively grossed over $670 million worldwide. Sleepless in Seattle, French Kiss, and You've Got Mail each reinforced her position as the genre's reigning star. Her two collaborations with Tom Hanks produced on-screen chemistry that felt almost inexplicable, the kind that cannot be manufactured or directed into existence. Audiences lined up for those films not because of marketing campaigns or special effects, but because they genuinely wanted to spend time with the people on screen. That is an extraordinarily rare quality, and Ryan had it in abundance. She was also more versatile than the romantic comedy label suggested. Her 1994 performance in When a Man Loves a Woman, in which she played an alcoholic guidance counselor, earned her a Screen Actors Guild Award nomination and demonstrated that she was fully capable of carrying a dramatic film on her shoulders. By 1998, she was appearing in multiple major releases in a single year and collecting a paycheck of $15 million for Proof of Life, a sum that placed her among the highest-paid performers in Hollywood regardless of gender. She had reportedly turned down the role of Clarice Starling in The Silence of the Lambs, a part that went to Jodie Foster and won her an Academy Award. Ryan's priorities lay elsewhere. She understood her audience, she understood her strengths, and for a full decade, that understanding made her virtually untouchable. A marriage quietly falling to pieces. While her professional life was thriving, her personal life was moving in a very different direction. Ryan had been married to Dennis Quaid since Valentine's Day 1991, a relationship that had begun on a movie set and had survived at least one major crisis before it even officially began. When the couple had originally planned to marry in 1990, Quaid came to Ryan with a confession. He had been struggling with a serious substance addiction that he had managed to keep hidden. Rather than walking away, Ryan supported him through treatment. He got clean. They got married. Their son Jack was born the following year and would eventually grow into a successful actor in his own right. But the stability those early years suggested was largely a surface impression. Quaid's demons did not disappear with sobriety, and the growing imbalance in their public profiles created a quiet but persistent tension in the relationship. As Ryan became one of the most famous women in the world, Quaid found himself increasingly invisible beside her. He later admitted in a television interview that walking down the street with Ryan meant disappearing entirely. People saw her, and only her. He acknowledged feeling diminished by that experience, and while he later reflected on it with some self-awareness and regret, the emotional reality of living in his wife's considerable shadow had clearly taken a toll. By the time Ryan and Quaid officially announced their separation in June 2000, the marriage had been hollowed out for years. Ryan herself acknowledged this in a 2006 interview with Oprah Winfrey, describing the relationship as fundamentally unhealthy and admitting she had probably stayed far longer than she should have. The marriage had not ended because of an affair. It had ended because it had never truly been working. The affair simply gave the tabloids a more dramatic explanation to print. Enter Russell Crowe. The film that brought Meg Ryan and Russell Crowe together was Proof of Life, a 2000 thriller in which Crowe played a hostage negotiator and Ryan played the wife of a kidnapped engineer. The plot required their characters to develop a complicated, emotionally charged connection under extreme circumstances. As it turned out, no great acting was required for the chemistry. What began as a professional relationship on a film set became something considerably more personal and considerably more public before the production had even wrapped. By the summer of 2000, before Ryan's divorce from Quaid had been legally finalized, photographs emerged of Ryan and Crowe leaving Tom Cruise's premiere party for Mission Impossible 2 hand in hand. It was a single image, but it was enough. The tabloid machinery activated immediately and with enormous force. The story wrote itself with almost cruel efficiency. America's sweetheart, the woman who had built a career on cinematic love stories, had apparently walked out of her marriage and into the arms of a notoriously volatile Australian actor with a reputation for intensity and a short fuse. The narrative was irresistible, and the press ran with it without looking back. Friends who witnessed the relationship from close range described something genuine and all-consuming. Ryan was reportedly deeply infatuated. Crowe, by several accounts, was even more invested, allegedly hoping the relationship would lead to marriage and children. He gave her lavish gifts, including a vintage 1963 Buick and a puppy, and his attention was described by those around them as overwhelming in its intensity. They traveled together across multiple continents, were spotted in restaurants across London during filming, and at one point went through an elaborate pretense of house hunting together in Australia. It looked, from the outside, like two people completely swept up in each other, which is precisely what they were. The relationship lasted less than a year. By December 2000, they were spending the holidays on opposite sides of the world. The end came without drama or public statement. They simply stepped away from each other and moved on. Crowe, speaking to the Herald Sun in early 2001, suggested that geography had been the deciding factor, that sustaining a relationship across continents over the course of a full year had proved impossible for both of them. He spoke of Ryan with evident warmth and described grieving the loss of her company, while insisting that the friendship between them had survived the romance, the career that fell, and the woman who refused to break. The professional consequences for Ryan were severe and swift. She had been Hollywood's most trusted female star. Now she was being described in the press as a home wrecker, a woman who had betrayed the romantic ideal she had spent her career portraying. The public, which had adored her precisely because of her warmth and her apparent wholesome sincerity, felt genuinely betrayed. The industry, always sensitive to shifts in public sentiment, began to quietly distance itself. Her next major public ordeal came in October 2003, when she sat down with legendary British talk show host Michael Parkinson to promote In the Cut, a dark erotic thriller directed by Jane Campion. The film was a bold creative departure, raw, explicit, and deliberately unsentimental, and Ryan had clearly committed to it with full artistic seriousness. What she encountered on Parkinson's set was something far less serious. The host questioned her choices, implied that her personal troubles had led her to make cynical creative decisions, and conducted what many observers would later describe as an interrogation rather than an interview. Ryan shut down. She gave short answers, looked visibly uncomfortable, and eventually told Parkinson to simply wrap things up. The public verdict was immediate and unforgiving. Parkinson called her behavior unforgivable. The British press called her arrogant, sullen, and cold. A viewer poll in 2006 placed the interview among the most shocking moments in chat show history. Ryan was cast once again as the villain. It took nearly 2 decades for the counter-narrative to emerge. In 2021, Parkinson told Radio Times that he regretted the way he had handled the encounter, that he had been visibly and inappropriately angry, and that he owed Ryan an apology. 2 words, he said, "I'm sorry." Ryan, speaking to the Times of London in 2024, said she had walked out of the studio immediately afterward and had not given Parkinson another moment of her attention since. In the Cut grossed only $23 million worldwide. Against the Ropes, released the following year, opened to just $3 million. Ryan stepped back from Hollywood entirely, telling the New York Times Magazine that she had felt burned out and disconnected, like she was watching her own life from behind glass. She said she felt that Hollywood was done with her, and she was honest enough to admit she felt done with it too. The liberating truth she eventually told. The version of events that the tabloids printed was neat, punishing, and almost entirely wrong. Meg Ryan did not blow up a happy marriage on a reckless impulse. She left a relationship that had long since ceased to function, found an intense and genuine connection with someone new, and then watched as the press reduced that complicated human experience to a simple morality tale in which she played the villain. Ryan herself has spoken about what it felt like to be publicly condemned. She described it as painful, but also unexpectedly freeing. Being labeled a Scarlet Woman, she said, meant that the pressure to maintain a perfect image simply evaporated. There was nothing left to protect. She recalled standing in a hotel lobby in London, feeling the room fall silent around her as people recognized and judged her, and instead of crumbling under the weight of their disapproval, she started laughing. She had discovered something important. Other people's opinions could only hurt you if you had built your sense of self on top of them. She spent years away from the spotlight, raising her daughter Daisy, adopted from China, and working with the organization CARE on initiatives aimed at lifting women out of poverty. When she eventually returned to filmmaking, it was entirely on her own terms. Her 2023 film, What Happens Later, which she co-wrote and directed in addition to starring in, was not a commercial blockbuster.